Do you want to introduce yourself just so that everyone listening knows who you are?
Sure. My name is Theresa Lee. Nice to see everybody out there. I have the privilege of overseeing talent, culture, and strategy at PetSmart, hopefully your neighborhood favorite pet store, and out here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Amazing. Do you still have pets?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have 2 bulldogs. Yeah, they are amazing. Great family pets, by the way. But their names are Molly Biscuits and Henry Von Triscuits.
Yes. Yes. These are great bulldog names.
They're great bulldog names. They're so funny. They are just like.
Come to your office?
Henry was with me on Friday. Yeah, Henry came in on Friday. He's a great office dog. Molly's not allowed here. She's a little too rambunctious. That's my a lot of people give me grief for not bringing her in more, but Henry's great. He just lays by my feet all day, gets pets whenever anybody wants to give him pets, and it's just the best day ever.
I love it. I still remember visiting you in the office, and just like in every spot there was like a little furry head. Yes. That would pop out from under a desk or in a conference room. It was pretty much the best work environment I've ever been in for pet lovers, I suppose.
For pet lovers, for sure. Yeah. It's really fun. You have a stressful moment and you're like, give me a puppy.
Yes.
There's always going to be one around.
Yes. I don't know if I would bring both of my dogs. I have 2.
Yeah. Sheepdogs, right?
2 sheepdogs, Old English sheepdogs. The names are not as cute as yours. I feel like if I could do a redo, maybe there would be a Vaughn in there somewhere, but they are Bobo and Lola, and one is 14, so we're counting our lucky stars.
Oh,
around, I know.
14. Oh, 14 amazing years of enriching each other's lives. That's so amazing.
Yes. I feel like so much of PetSmart and who you all are is embodied in this idea of your pets come to work with you and they're part of the family. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about what all of that means for your culture. Just the fact that what you do and who you are feels like it overlaps a lot.
Yeah, it is the most amazing thing. I think it is the differentiator for us. So in a world where, there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of places that people have choices to go and work. The thing that separates us, continues to separate us, is the alignment of the brand, the customer, and the associate. Like, how incredible is that we all get to be on the same page about, the mission of just pets bringing joy into our lives. And it's awesome. I think the thing that I remember when I first got here, I brought Molly in. She was still a puppy, so she was allowed back then because she was good. But I was walking her through, we have like this courtyard, and we have a dog park that we can bring our dogs to, when we don't have meetings and whatnot, they can play together. And I was on my way over there, and the COO, who had just started around the same time I did, we would just happen to be kind of walking past each other in this courtyard. And, in normal circumstances, I'm sure we both would have said, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" Right? But instead of that, it was like, "Oh, hi, who's this? Tell me all about her." It was like this moment where he got to meet a member of my family, not just, just say hi in passing. And from that moment on, I was like, this is like the impact to our culture is this is the great equalizer. When I go into stores, I know immediately that I have something in common with the associate population, no matter what. Because if you're working for PetSmart or at a PetSmart store or at a PetSmart distribution center, it doesn't matter. You have this in common. So it is this wonderful equalizer that puts us all on the same page about what it is we're here to do and how we get to impact, and make lives better through pets. It's incredible, really.
What I also heard you say is it helps you build a relationship really quickly.
Yeah.
Like it's fun. A common thing you can talk about, right? In a world where it's sometimes hard to find something in common with one another, unless you dig a little, this one feels like it's sitting right at the surface.
It is. It's sitting right at the surface. And if you're working here, you really believe in the mission. You really believe that pets make us better and that pets are here to bring more joy into our lives. And that is something that when you have that in common with someone, it's almost like I know that person is part of somebody who could be part of my pack, because they are just, that alignment is just really powerful.
Yes, I love it. When one of the reasons why I wanted us to have this conversation was because, as you've seen this before, but I want to share it with the group here. We decided to do some pretty significant research on the front line of companies. And why we call them the front line, they're the folks, you talked about the brand, the customer, the associate. They're the associate who are representing the brand and interacting with the customer often the most.
Sure.
And I think you and I can share in this from our experience together, working together. Sometimes it's a workforce that's not always understood or that people think certain things about but don't quite have a pulse on. And so it was really important for our team at Idealis and for me to make sure we kept a finger on the pulse of this workforce.
Yeah.
And there were some big findings we had, some that may have surprised you and some that maybe weren't as surprising. I don't know, you'll tell me. But the first one that kind of came to mind, and maybe it's tied to this culture piece that you're talking about, is our data showed that the frontline worker experience is actually more positive than the non-frontline worker experience right now. Like, not just a little bit more positive, quite a bit more positive. They feel more respected. They feel like they're treated with dignity. They feel like their coworkers care about them. Their managers care about them more. And I would love to understand, one, what you think about that. Two, how that applies to the world you're in, because you oversee the human experience at work for your workforce at PetSmart. So tell me what you're thinking.
When I read that in the data, I was a little surprised at the gap, right? Between, frontline and non-frontline. But then when I really sat back and thought about it, I became like, it made sense to me. At least in our world, the reality is that I think sometimes when we sit in these seats, when we are, kind of at the corporate center or the office or whatever the case might be, it's really easy to lose sight of what it means to walk into a store every single day and serve the customer. And as hard as you try, as many visits as you go on, like my job is this, right? I sit here, I am in meetings, I talk strategy, I answer emails. My work experience is just so vastly different than walking into a store and making sure that the customer, that, at least in our world, the customer is relying on me as somebody who is knowledgeable to tell them what it is they should feed their pet. Like that's when you sit back and think about that, like that's a member of my family, and I'm taking advice from somebody who is in one of our stores who, just happens to have this love of pets. And so they're working at a PetSmart. And now all of a sudden they're looked at as that expert. And so the responsibility to the community that you build through that, kind of interaction, I think is really real. And then you're doing that on a team of people who all have, a similar experience to you, and you're in it together, and, you're working the rushes together, and you're just making it all work. And so I think that camaraderie and in serving the community is something that is just really different than what I do every single day, or what the people in my building do every single day. It's a different experience. So I was surprised at how big the gap was. But then, when I thought about it, it's like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really actually quite awesome to get out there and to serve the community and my, my cohort that way. It'd be fun.
Yes. Well, and what you just described, when you are in a frontline role, one of the things we found in the research is your job is a little bit more clear. There are pretty clear boundaries. Sometimes in corporate roles, the boundaries are blurred. Your job is a little bit of everybody's job. Like the lines are not as clear.
Yeah.
But when you're like, this is my job and this is my responsibility, there's a lot of benefit to that, because you can wear your expert vest and you can show up and do your best work because you know what that is.
Right.
And the camaraderie, I mean, this was something when we worked together, we felt as well, like doing site visits and connecting with people. Like one of the stories I tell my team a lot about is one time when we went on a site visit, and I don't know if you were with me or if I came back and probably told this to you with tears in my eyes, because I'd never experienced anything like this in any other job I'd ever had, was an employee who said, a member of their family had passed away, and it was during COVID. And the people who were able to come to the funeral to carry the casket were his colleagues.
Yeah.
Because they were already coming out every day. They were already spending time together.
Yeah.
And so his colleagues came out and carried his father or mother's casket at a funeral on behalf of his family.
Yeah.
Like, I still get goosebumps thinking about that story.
Yeah.
Because what does that say about the relationship? You talked about camaraderie.
Yeah.
That's built amongst people who are working shoulder to shoulder, as they used to say at our old company, right? Like, what's your take on that? Like, is that normal? Was that abnormal?
I think that's a really extreme example of how it comes to life, and during a really extreme time in our in our world. But I think it comes to life like that in little moments every single day. And that's what makes it possible for those moments that really matter for somebody to feel, like a natural occurrence, to, help me in that way at a time where I'm in need the most. So I think every single day we see our associates be there for one another. And, they have a tough customer interaction, one that really rattles them because, public's not easy to deal with all the time. Often not. And, something really rattles you, who are you going to go and talk to about that? It's going to be the people who get it. So I think we see those moments happen every single day. You're literally there in the trenches, having to make it work, having to, recover when things don't go as well. And it just builds, I think, that trust and camaraderie, like I said, to knowing that these are the people that I can count on. It also makes it really clear who you can't count on. So I think both can be true at the same time, which is why, having a team of people who really gel when you're working, shoulder to shoulder is really important to the culture.
When you think about your frontline and knowing all of the different elements, right? Sometimes the public can be hard to handle and navigate. Sometimes colleague relationships don't always work, especially when you're working with each other. How do you track and manage and understand the frontline work experience?
Yeah. I think some of the most important things that I've come to learn about our frontline workforce, and really any frontline workforce, it doesn't come from a dashboard. It comes from really being in stores and listening. So when I think about engagement, I always start, kind of with a specific associate and not a score. Similar to what you just described, like you are always going to remember that story and what it, exemplifies for you when you think about the experience on the front line. I remember conversations in stores when somebody tells me, listen, I love working here. I love what I do, but this one thing or these 5 things make it harder than it needs to be.
Yes.
And I think that's the human experience that we try and understand, because those are the things that are within our control in most cases to be able to actually do something about. So we absolutely use data, right? Like we take surveys, we actually take a lot of surveys. We do, kind of a continuous listening program. We're looking at onboarding surveys. We're looking at milestone surveys. So we constantly have a pulse on what the data is telling us, but then we contextualize that with in-store visits. We do what we call our program is called Voice of the Associate. So we go on our tours and we get out there and we get people in some nondescript, hotel conference room, and we just talk. And we understand, and going into that, we study the data, right? We're studying what this particular location might be dealing with, but then we see what they say and get some really great, insights from being able to do both. So, but I would say overall, what really matters to our associates too is what happens after we listen. So, they'll notice if something changes, especially when it's something that's in their day-to-day. Because we always tell them when we have these conversations, you're going to give me a couple of different types of feedback here. You're going to give me things that I can, maybe we can solve in this room right now, and things that from an enterprise standpoint, we're going to have to spend some time on. And I don't know what you're going to tell me. I don't know what's coming out of your mouth next, but I know that it's going to be probably in one of those two camps. And so when we can solve something, I mean, I've been in those conversations where somebody told us once about this policy that just didn't make any sense about price matching. And it happened to be that one of the partners that we took with us on this particular trip was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. They stepped out, made a phone call, and before the session was even done, we had it fixed, or had a plan to fix it. And so like those, those sorts of, examples are plentiful. It doesn't mean that we can fix, quote unquote, fix everything all at one time, but it does help us prioritize and figure out what's going to be most meaningful to folks.
Well, and the power of that story, that the right person was in the room and the right conversation was happening and the right person raised their voice and said, this is a problem, and something was done, goes back to the value of listening, because that might not show up, or it'll be buried in row 1,522 of a survey.
Exactly.
Versus hearing it. You said the word contextualize. I would add, you also humanize it.
We do.
And I feel like in past lives for both of us, you can look at data and think of it as data, and sometimes forget that those data points reflect human lives and human experiences. And particularly for the frontline, where they maybe don't have the most privilege or have the most access or the most resources, humanizing that data seems that much more important, because oftentimes it's the bulk of a workforce in a particular company. When you think about that being the case for you all, I imagine at PetSmart, the bulk of your workforce are sitting in the associate population, given the nature of the business. How important is that workforce to everything that you all do? And how do you hold that center to all of the other corporate stuff?
Yeah, I think for us, and in retail in particular, if any retailer answers this question a different way, they're lying, I think, because the frontline isn't just, like part of the business. They are the business. They are the brand. When you are interacting with a PetSmart associate, you are interacting with the brand. And so, every customer experience happens in a moment, whether it's on the sales floor or at checkout. Again, like I was saying before, during a conversation about what should I feed my pet, and that moment is either experienced positively, neutrally, or negatively based on the interaction that you have, with an associate. I have seen in front of my eyes so many times how, a caring associate can turn a routine visit into something that turns into a relationship where the number of times I've been in a store where, we tend to travel in packs when we go in store visits, right?
Very on brand.
Right. It's fairly obvious when the corporate folks are in a store, and like it or not, we hate that, but it is true. You cast a shadow is just true.
You're not going in as like undercover boss.
No, sometimes, but no, not really. But we tend to travel in packs, and they know we're coming. And the number of times that a regular customer is like, hey, you guys don't belong here. Like, you're not the regular crew, but you're clearly with PetSmart. And I want you to know Sally, Joe, and so are, the best of the best.
Yeah.
Right. Like, they take care of my Pookie, and they love, everything about, and, like so-and-so in the salon, or I went on I had to go on a last minute vacation in the hotel, or, it was the training that I got from John that, enabled me to actually keep my pet. Like, those stories are just endless. And all you have to be doing is be wearing a PetSmart, vest or something, and be standing in the vestibule of the store, and you will get those stories without even trying. It's really remarkable. So, our frontline teams are, so incredibly important to us. They don't just execute, right? Like, they are constantly informing what it is that we should be focused on and why. They help us understand that customer really clearly. And so that's, for us, why investing in them just really isn't optional, because if they feel supported, then we know our customers will too.
Well, and that's the question I was going to ask you next around, given the criticality of this group of people who are the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things we found in our data was, although they are treated with more dignity, more respect, they feel more cared for, there's this pretty significant gap in terms of their level of job concern and their concerns around topics that are threatening to their jobs, whether it's AI or having the skills required to be able to succeed, advancement in their jobs. how do you keep the morale and the skills and the experiences of this frontline workforce up to par with the world around them?
Yeah, I think this is something for PetSmart that's, I think, arguably more important than other, certainly retailers, right? Like, because if you think about our context, we are, we're a retailer. We're, stocking shelves and checking people out and kind of the normal things that you would expect. But we're also taking care of live animals. We're taking care of your family members. They're in our salons, they're in our hotels. We have store-owned pets, that we're making sure have, as are extremely well taken care of on their journey to wherever their forever home might be. So for us, the complexity for the expertise is just even more, I think, important, just so that we can run a store day to day. So we have, what we do here is we put what we call knowledgeable associate at the core of our strategy. So we have, lots of strategies, lots of things that we focus on so that we can differentiate ourselves as a business from our competitive set. But one of those things is really leaning into the fact that knowledgeable associates are what make the difference. We see it in our data. I mean, speaking of data, we see it in our NPS data. We see it, like I said, when we're standing in a vestibule of a store and people just tell us about it. So we make sure and are actually in the process of completely rethinking the way that we get comfortable with our associates being upskilled. And one of the things that we're going to do in that process that we've already rolled out is leveraging technology in a way that's useful to them. So as an example, the PetSmart of today looks like really heavy onboarding and not enough in the moment knowledge that you need when you're dealing with a corner case or really just dealing with something that you haven't dealt with before. Because, our turnover in retail is lower than our competitive set, but it's not nothing. So we have to constantly be, kind of getting our new folks up to speed. But what we found in doing this research and figuring out how we can do exactly what you're saying with the question is that we front load too much. We put way too much. It's way too much up front. And so we have to change that approach. We have to probably go to a place where their onboarding is a little bit more static, a little bit more, like just how do I get good at my job? And then figure out ways to do more continuous learning. What are those mechanisms where on a monthly basis you can learn something that's important to you? But then, okay, I've done onboarding and then I've done some continuous learning on a month-to-month basis. There's only so much time in a day. What do I do when I have that one question that I just can't simply, I can't simply know because it wasn't in my onboarding and I haven't gotten there yet in my learning journey? That's where technology comes into play for us. That's where we are leveraging AI to, understand our policies, our procedures. We view it as a learning tool. I have responsibility of the learning team here, and we really, when it first, became an idea, we're like, okay, how do we leverage this? We're doing intake with a part of, our process team that needs to change XYZ process in the stores. How do we leverage the technology in a way that becomes part of the learning solution? It's not the only solution, but it's part of the overall learning solution so that we're not losing ground there. Because the truth of the matter is there's only so many people you can have in a store at one time. There's only so many hours that go into a week. If the guinea pig expert isn't there that day, how do I get as up to speed as I can in the moment when a customer needs something? So that's how we think about leveraging and keeping them, kind of up to speed. And then we're also on a path of creating what is ultimate optional, kind of opt into expertise look like when you want to really showcase through badges or something along those lines that you are the expert on adoptions or you are the expert on, small pets or something like that. That's really important to our customers. So we're not done yet. We're, kind of in the middle of figuring it all out. But I know that we're not providing our associates with the best learning experience right now that sets them up for success with the customers. So it's, like I said, key to our strategy that we get better there, so that they can, again, be the best that they can be, provide those experiences to our customers in a way that's just so much easier than having to remember what you learned in onboarding, 6 months ago.
What I'm hearing you describe in your strategy, which is not surprising knowing who you are, is you started with the realities and experiences of people, and then you designed backwards.
That's great.
And I think a lot of times in clients that we work with, they're looking for the answer from the top down.
Yeah.
And the way that we always go about the work is, hang on a second, let's listen from the bottom up, because the answer is in the room. Someone knows what's getting in the way. And your point around it's too much too fast all at once.
Yep.
Is the answer, right? Okay, so then how do we stretch out the learning? And then the use of AI is fascinating because it is an area that's causing people a lot of concern.
Yeah.
But we also found that people with lower socioeconomic status, with less college degree, sort of accreditation type degrees, they're using AI more.
Yeah.
And so there's this desire to want to keep up and a benefit to it that people acknowledge, but they also see that it could actually put their jobs at risk. So the people who are the highest users are also seeing it as the greatest risk.
Yeah.
But the way you're describing
what we
it,
call our AI, we call it associate helper.
Yes, you named it.
We named it. Yeah.
And again, that kind of humanizes it. It's like, here's a person thing. I don't love the idea of humanizing AI, by the way. It kind of freaks me out. But
I get it.
It kind of puts you in this, like, it's on my team.
Right.
And it's here to support me. And the way that you're framing it is, this is not a thing to be afraid of because it's going to make me lose my job. Right. This thing is actually going to help me do my job.
Right.
And that openness to that adoption, I imagine, is much higher.
Yeah, as long as we feed it with the information that's relevant to their day to day, and that's something that we consistently have to work on. But I think the reality is that we have such a passionate associate base who, it's just not reasonable to assume that somebody starting in our stores can learn everything that they need to know about taking care of, call it 15 different species of store-owned pets at any one time. And so I think that makes the acceptance of the help, but what they do have consistently is a love of these pets. You're going to put these pets in front of them. They want to take care of them because that's just who they are as people, as humans. And so it makes the acceptance of the help, I think, a little bit more realistic because they want to, take care of a life, a heartbeat.
Yes.
It's important.
And as you said, it's someone's family member, right? It's like, it's such an important part of someone's family, and you can feel the weight of that. Yeah. You talk a bit about the upskilling of the talent that you have, whether it's technical skills or giving them the answers they need, but you also keep going back to like this character of your associates.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding your people?
Oh, our people really find us. I think we're very lucky in that way. Like one of the early ahas I had is, when I started here, my kids were like 4 and 5. And like, we were, as parents, building into them this love of pets, right? Because we had pets, because we appreciated pets, because we'd watch pet videos, like whatever the case was. And I had this like early insight where it's like, oh, we are constantly creating people out there who would love working in our stores, like absolutely, as they are, kind of coming up through life and figuring out what they want to do. We should be a great choice for somebody who just has this extreme love of pets, and that has prevailed. So, but we make sure that our employment brand is just as fun as it can possibly be, to help people understand that, like, if you want to come have that meaningful, kind of put one of those passions to work for you, you can, and it works out really, really well for us. So we just lean into the brand, quite frankly, and it pays off.
There was something that came out in our data that I'm curious if this is part of that experience of creating a brand in every store around frontline leaders. And if I think back to our experience together, there were these leaders that we would meet who weren't just bosses. They were, in many ways pastors, ministers, priests. They were, you know, mortgage brokers telling them who to go to and whether they should rent or buy a house. They were offering marital advice. They were giving guidance on schooling, helping people out, finishing up their tuition. I mean, it was extraordinary what these leaders were doing. And our data revealed this very much so, that when frontline workers were asked, how do you feel about your boss? Above and beyond non-frontline workers, they felt that their bosses were more effective.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be the case for you? And
Yes.
What do you see in great leaders of the frontline?
Yeah. So I would say in every situation that doesn't go well, it comes back to frontline leadership not landing. In every situation where it does go well, it's because frontline leadership is working. Like, that's just as simply put as I can make it. But I would say the best frontline worker or leaders that I've worked with, they don't explain the environment. They create the conditions for their teams to win. So, like, for me, what stands out is great frontline leaders, and you described it, right? Like in all the ways that our, you know, our previous context kind of like saw these leaders come to life. Like, they take ownership of their team and they own their results. They own their consistency. They own the associate and customer experience. And, you know, it's just them showing up and being deeply responsible for, you know, the building, the four walls that they run. Like, the people who are the most successful and have the teams that have the most followership are the ones that just lean into that and own it. It's how they're, you know, they're not managed by their circumstances. They're managed by their behaviors. They create really strong clarity. They try not to overwhelm with, you know, communication. They remove obstacles. They know, their teams know at all times what matters, you know, like throughout the week, because they put that into practice. They're just, I would say, relentlessly accountable to themselves, to their teams, to their building, to their customers. They own their talent development, like in a really meaningful way. They don't see it as optional or secondary or anything like that. They understand that development of their people, it does result in results that they like and that they can sustain. They're constantly building their next, you know, and who's coming behind. They're exporting talent wherever they can. They're creating strong benches. So in my mind, it's all of those things. But what they also do really well is understand that, we see this in our district leaders in particular, the people who have multi-unit experience. They understand that it takes all of those things to create, you know, good results for their people, for their customer, and for, you know, the bottom line. But they know where they have to spend their energy. You know, it might not be all of those things at one time. And they can, I think good frontline leaders know how to, or great frontline leaders know how to pick and choose and pull what lever when. Because the other thing that's true is they're only human, and we ask a lot of them. And so to put all of that, to take all of that responsibility on is, I think, a higher calling. But then to know when you have to put it into practice is for one, you know, for one of your team members versus another is just where the skill gets really sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much, it reminds me of parenting, to be honest, right?
100%.
Like, and we did some research on this before, like, are parents better leaders, or do we find that, we did find that people who are parents who are also leaders are happier than people who are non-parents who are leaders. I think it's because you test a lot of these skills when you're taking care of dependents.
Yeah.
It's the same as people at work who are dependent on you.
Yeah.
And the skill that you described of using judgment and discretion on, this is really important, this is super urgent. You know, if I think of examples where we've seen frontline leadership go wrong, it's people who are miscalibrated on what matters.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, especially with the frontline workforce, if you notice that someone is coming into work and they're not well, they're not in a good place, and you miss it, you are putting your brand and your customer experience at risk. But if you get it, you're actually elevating the conditions for your team to be successful because you're taking care of people first. that feels like it's so intuitive, but I don't think it's all that intuitive for lots of people, is it?
No, I think it is, it's not incredibly intuitive. I think it takes practice to learn. I think, I mean, every single day, I'm a leader, you're a leader, we study this space and I still learn new things all the time. So what, it's a lot easier to talk about it than it is to actually practice it when it's right in front of you. And the thing about frontline leaders is they never get a break, right? Like they never, ever are in a position where they don't have to practice something because their associate populations are so diverse and vast and, dealing with life is lifing. And so so I think the practice is what sharpens the skill at the end of the day. But I think the people who really can connect that is what equates to the customers being happy and the results being there are the folks that then know what to prioritize. But that I think comes with time. Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is in our data, we saw that frontline leaders were being rated more effective than non-frontline leaders. I wonder if some of that is actually because people see them trying.
I think people see them trying, and I think at least my observation of non-frontline leaders is the skill set can atrophy, if not to, I mean, I have a killer team, but there have been times where I haven't, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I've got to figure out what to do because I am out of practice because I've had more, things go well than not. And so I don't know. I think everything is just sharpening the tool, and so, but I do think frontline leaders have to keep those tools really sharp if they're going to be effective.
I love that as a takeaway. Before I let you go, if there was one piece of advice you give to peers who also are overseeing the human experience of frontline workers, what would it be?
You might laugh when you hear me say this, but I would say it's really simple. Know what you're solving for. Know what you're solving for. If you don't know what you're solving for, your time will be wasted. You will not be, I don't know about all of my peers out there, but I certainly like to spend my time on solving the right problems and making an impact. And if your frontline workforce is what you're solving for, then you better know what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes. And so that just has to be front and center. Otherwise, who knows if what you're doing is actually going to make an impact.
I love that. If there was a Theresa Lee t-shirt, it would definitely say, what are we solving for? What are we solving for?
What are we solving for? Of course.
You are the best. I appreciate you.
It's so good talking with you.
You too.